Sunday dinner was already tense before I even sat down. When I walked in, no one bothered to greet me. The table was set, eggs, sausage, bagels, but everyone was locked in their own little worlds. My mom rinsed spotless dishes at the sink, my dad sat near the muted TV, Jake gave me a half-hearted nod, and Lindsay was sipping a mimosa like she'd been teleported to some rooftop brunch in Manhattan, instead of our tacky beige dining room in Ohio. I pulled out a chair, slid in quietly. For a moment, the only sounds were forks scraping plates and Lindsay's nails tapping her phone screen. Then she finally looked up, smirked, and dropped the line. "It's adorable you still come here, like you actually matter." Nobody flinched. Nobody told her to stop. My dad gave a chuckle. My mom kept chewing. Even Jake stared down at his plate. I just chewed my dry bagel in silence, letting it anchor me to the moment while something inside me cracked, not loudly, but cleanly. I excused myself soon after, muttering about errands. The next day, I sat at my laptop and pulled up every subscription tied to my name. Hulu, Netflix, HBO, Spotify, even that ridiculous Hallmark channel my mom begged me to get last Christmas. I canceled all of it. 3 days later, my phone buzzed. "Jake, why's everything disconnected?" Seconds later, the group chat exploded. Lindsay blamed the Wi-Fi, Mom wondered if the TV was broken, Dad sent a random thumbs-up emoji. Not one of them asked me directly. And I didn't volunteer an answer. I just watched them scramble. That same night, I opened the folder labeled TC Property, Traverse City. The family getaway. Except it wasn't really theirs. Dad had transferred the deed to me 4 years ago, trying to shield it from creditors. He always said it was temporary, that I'd give it back once things settled down. They never did. And he never asked. So, I listed it. No visits, no goodbyes, just photos from last summer, price to sell. By Friday, I had 2 offers. One was cash. I accepted. That evening, as I was finishing cold spaghetti over the sink, my phone rang, unknown number. I picked up. A man introduced himself as Ronald Berenger, Dad's lawyer. His voice was firm, but nervous at the edges. He said my father was deeply distressed that the Traverse City property was up for sale, and that there had been an understanding it would be returned to him eventually. He warned of serious legal consequences if the sale went through. I let him finish, then calmly told him to check county records. Silence. Then a weak laugh. He asked for the documents. I told him he'd get them through proper legal channels like everyone else. I hung up. By Wednesday, the sale had closed. 6 figures dropped into my account. Clean. Final. Done. Thursday night, Dad called. This time, no small talk. Just rage, accusations of betrayal, of stealing from family, of blood and loyalty. He shouted that I had ruined him, demanded I return the money, threatened lawsuits. I waited for him to finish, then said flatly, "Every receipt, every email, every transfer is in my name. You left it that way for 4 years. If you want court, I'll see you there. But I won't be covering your lawyer this time." The line went dead. That weekend, my car was plastered with eggs, roof, windshield, vents. Yolk dripping into the grill, stinking for days. I didn't need proof to know who did it. Lindsay's kind of revenge has always been messy and childish. I got the mess cleaned up and let it go. By Monday morning though, my mailbox was crammed full, not with letters, but torn scraps of coupons, shredded ads, and random paper bits. Stuffed so tightly, I had to claw it out piece by piece. No note. No name. Just disorder. I stayed quiet. That Friday, I stepped outside to find my back tire slashed. Not a slow leak, cut clean through the sidewall. $170 gone. The week after, it was the front tire. The week after that, the other side. Never all at once, always one at a time, just enough to keep me off the road, but not enough for insurance to bother with. I didn't report it, didn't point fingers. I just replaced them, keeping every receipt neatly tucked into a folder I titled Petty. But I wasn't finished. Because 2 years ago, Lindsay couldn't land a car loan. Terrible credit, missed payments, even a repo from college hanging over her. She begged me to co-sign. Promised I'd never have to cover a single bill. Of course, she missed the very first one. I didn't even say anything. I just paid it, and then the next, and the next. For 2 years, I kept her car afloat, paying quietly out of guilt, or routine, or plain stupidity. Not anymore. That Friday, I logged into the account and canceled autopay. No heads up. No warning. Just closed the laptop and waited. It took 3 days. By Monday morning, I had 9 missed calls, 7 voicemails, and 13 texts, all from Lindsay. She almost never calls. She texts demands, sends voice notes when she's ranting, throws gifs when she's being passive-aggressive. But this time, it was non-stop ringing. I didn't answer. The messages started tame. Hey, did autopay glitch? Then sharper, my car payment bounced. Got a late notice. What's going on? Finally, rage. If this is some power trip, Lisa, it's not funny. I drive this car to work. Then, silence. Around 11:30 a.m., the family group chat lit up. Lindsay, someone's screwing with my account. My car payment's overdue. Who knows anything? Dad, fix it. Mom, can we stop with all this drama? We're not that kind of family. Jake, isn't it your loan? I said nothing. Just watched them talk around me like I was some stranger they'd hired, who suddenly stopped showing up to work. By 3 p.m., Lindsay dropped a screenshot into the chat, her account portal, bright red payment failed plastered across the top. Then came her essay, claiming she never begged for help, that she didn't even know why I was involved, accusing me of tanking her credit out of spite. Sure. I closed the thread and deleted it. No more fiction. 2 nights later, Jake messaged me directly. They're losing it. Dad smashed the hallway door. Lindsay's calling everyone she knows. Mom hasn't spoken since yesterday. I asked if he was okay. He wrote back, I need to get out. I told him I'd pick him up the next day. We didn't go back after that. Just grabbed fast food and drove to a side of the city none of us ever had reason to visit. I'd been scanning listings for weeks. Found a 1-bedroom in an old but solid building, $600 a month, utilities separate, bus line nearby. I hadn't mentioned it until we pulled into the lot. Jake thought we were just killing time. I handed him the keys. Told him to look around. He stood in the empty living room, hands stuffed in his hoodie, staring. Finally, he asked, "Why are you doing this?" I told him it wasn't a gift, it was a loan. I'd cover the deposit, first and last month, and the startup bills. But every cent had to be paid back. Not because I needed the money, but because he needed to prove it to himself. First payment in 30 days. Any amount he could manage. No charity, just a real shot. He nodded. Okay. That night, we swung by the house. He went in, grabbed a backpack and his PS4, and walked out in under 10 minutes. Nobody stopped him. Nobody asked where he was headed. Maybe they didn't notice. Maybe they didn't care. I dropped him off with a few groceries, the old mattress I'd dragged over earlier, and a router I'd set up in his name. At midnight, he texted me. This is the first time I've been able to hear myself think in months. I didn't reply. Just smiled, shut off my phone. Because walking away from family doesn't end with a big fight. It's quieter. No screaming, no slammed doors, no tears on the porch. It happens when you stop picking up calls, stop fixing everything, stop paying the bills they shoved onto you. It happens when you just stop showing up. That's when the shift became obvious. A few weeks had passed since I stopped covering Lindsay's car payments and helped Jake move out. Strangely, no one had reached out, not even Lindsay. I figured she was waiting me out, convinced I'd eventually cave and rescue her like always. But this time, I didn't, and she never asked again. For the first time in years, I had actual breathing room. No more juggling bills that weren't mine. No more fake smiles at family brunches where nobody really looked at each other. One night, I opened my bank records from the last 2 years and ran the math. I had saved just over $11,000. 11 grand that used to disappear month after month into Lindsay's Audi payments, insurance, random fees she hid, penalties she pretended didn't exist. 2 years of my money going into her credit rebuild because I was the reliable one. Then I compared it to what I'd spent helping Jake, deposits, groceries, a second-hand desk, a mattress, a bus pass. Altogether, just under $3,000. And unlike Lindsay, he was paying me back. He'd just sent me his first $100, right on time, with a screenshot of the transfer. I didn't reply, but I saved it in the folder with his lease. Proof he was at least trying, no drama, no excuses, just effort. A week later, I ran into Uncle Brad in Safeway by the egg section. He asked how I'd been, then leaned in, lowering his voice like we were conspiring. "Your mom says you emptied the family accounts, even sold the house out from under them." I laughed out loud. The house had been in my name for 4 years. He smirked and admitted, "Between you and me, nobody really bought that story. Your parents have always been dramatic. Everyone knew Lindsay was the favorite." Then he added, "Not everyone thinks you're the villain here." I didn't realize how badly I needed to hear that. Later that week, my cousin Ally pulled me aside downtown and said nearly the same thing. She told me my parents were spinning tales about me abandoning the family, painting me as cold. But she didn't believe it either. "They always expected too much from you," she said quietly. Turns out, the extended family was divided, some stayed silent, some had secretly been rooting for me. Nobody wanted to confront my parents directly, but the message was clear: we get it, we just don't want to be caught in the middle. That was fine. I didn't need sides chosen, only honesty. Meanwhile, Lindsay's cryptic social media updates stopped cold the day she got a repossession notice. I didn't warn her, didn't intervene. The system was doing what I never had the guts to. Jake, on the other hand, was moving forward. He texted me about a second interview, and about maybe starting night classes next semester. He didn't want to stay in retail forever. I told him I'd help with tuition if he kept up his rent payments. Same rules though, every dollar alone, nothing free. For once, I wasn't the family ATM. Not the safety net for people who never once returned the favor. If they wanted to act like I didn't matter, fine, let them live in the version of life where I truly didn't. Then, about a month after Jake moved in, I got a letter. An actual letter, hand-delivered, no stamp. It was from my mom. Just a few short lines. She hoped I was doing okay, that she missed how things used to be, that Dad was upset, Lindsay was going through a lot. And then at the bottom, almost as an afterthought, "Please don't hurt the family anymore." That line stuck with me for hours. As if I had stolen something from them. As if everything I'd given, money, years, a house, meant nothing. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just guilt scribbled in cursive. I burned the letter in a dish on my balcony. 2 days later, Jake called from a borrowed phone. His had been cut off. His mom finally dropped him from the family plan. He shrugged it off, said he'd get a prepaid and figure it out. That same night, I got a credit alert. Someone had tried applying for an auto loan using my social security number at a dealership nearby. The attempt failed thanks to the freeze I'd set up after the house sale, but I didn't need to ask who it was. It was Lindsay. I filed a fraud alert and kept quiet. Let her keep wondering why nothing was going through. That weekend, I swung by Jake's place with groceries and a few kitchen basics. We sat on his beat-up couch while he tinkered with a shaky chair someone had given him for free. He told me he was taking extra shifts, planning to up his rent payments to $150 a month. I asked why. He shrugged. Feels right. Then he paused, looked at me, and said something I wasn't expecting. Lindsay mentioned they were planning to come after me again, not legally, not in court, but in their own way. I asked her what that meant. She didn't give details, only said they wanted me to regret turning on my own blood. I didn't answer, just let the words hang in the air. It wasn't quite a threat, but it wasn't harmless either. Jake caught my expression and said quietly, "I don't think they know how to function without you." I told him that was the issue, they never really knew what to do with me in the first place. Later that night, I sat in my apartment, watching Jake's rent payment land in my account right on time. No excuses. No chaos. Just steady progress. That's when it hit me, the more they unraveled, the quieter I became and the more control I had. They hadn't realized yet, but there was nothing left for them to hold over me. 3 months had gone by since I finally cut ties. Not a single call from my mom. No voicemail from my dad. Lindsay hadn't reached out either, though Jake told me she tried again, using my information for a store credit card. It got blocked instantly. I filed another report and moved on. By then, it barely registered as surprising. Jake was still living in that small apartment, juggling 2 jobs, sending me payments every month. Sometimes only $80, sometimes a little more, but always consistent, always with a short note, "Still trying." That note meant more to me than anything I ever got from the rest of them. One night he called, said he was looking into HVAC certification classes. He'd found out the tuition wasn't outrageous but still more than he could handle right away. He never asked me to cover it, just spoke it out loud, like testing the idea. I told him the same thing I always do, if he kept up with rent and stayed on track, I'd front the tuition as a loan. Every cent accounted for. He laughed, "Nothing free." I said, "Exactly," and he changed the subject. Later that evening, I opened a folder on my desktop titled Family Fallout. I hadn't touched it in weeks, but curiosity pulled me back. I went through every payment I'd stopped making, every subscription canceled, every loan I shut down. I ran the math, I had saved $11,052. Out of that, I'd spent $3,135 on Jake, rent, deposit, groceries, a phone when his got cut. That still left me with nearly $8,000 that would have vanished if I'd stayed trapped in the role they forced me into. I hadn't spoken to my parents. They hadn't tried either. According to Jake, the house felt strange now. Lindsay had moved back in, Dad locked his office like a vault, and Mom took down every family picture that had me in it, like erasing me might undo the truth. They were telling anyone who'd listen that I'd stolen from them, abandoned family, betrayed them for money. But they left out everything else, the years I paid without recognition, the vacation home they dumped in my name to dodge taxes, the times they laughed while my sister humiliated me at brunch. People noticed those holes in the story. I ran into Uncle Brad at a gas station. He gave me a small nod and said, "Heard they're still furious." "Heard you're still standing." I just smiled. Then he added, "Most of us think you did the right thing. We just didn't know how to say it without blowing things up. Probably feels good not being needed anymore." And he was right. That's exactly what it was. I wasn't needed. And for the first time in my life, that felt like freedom. 3 months later, everything shifted, not for them, but for me. They were still stuck in that same rundown house. Lindsay had sold the Audi after more missed payments, now driving a beat-up Honda she paid for in cash. Dad hardly came upstairs, glued to his recliner in the basement, drowning in silence and beer. Mom busied herself rearranging furniture, labeling kitchen drawers, pretending she could control something while the bigger pieces of life fell apart. No apology. No calls. Not even a bitter text. They had finally realized I wasn't coming back. Jake was the only thin thread left between us, and even that was loosening. He was still working 2 jobs, paying me back faithfully, even raised his payments to $200. He sent me pictures of groceries he cooked himself, and a snapshot of the HVAC course catalog with the class he wanted circled in red. Slowly but surely, he was becoming his own person. And me? I was free. No surprise bills. No late-night guilt calls. No Sunday brunches with people who never saw me. My bank account stayed steady. My phone only rang for people I chose. My life belonged to me. I hadn't forgiven them, and I hadn't forgotten. But I no longer needed closure. I had distance. I had proof. I had peace.